What is going on, New York Giants fans? Welcome to another video from Hit Squad Productions. In this video, we're going to talk about the presser that just happened with Judge and Dave Gettleman. There were some quotes that I liked by Judge. There were some quotes by Dave Gettleman I liked as well. We're going to give our thoughts on that because I thought coming away from this interview, there was a lot to take. There were some positives, there were some head scratchers, but we're going to talk about that in this video. Now let's start with Judge. Now, ahead of the draft, Judge was asked about college players' pro days, to which, honestly, he stated something that I think that we should all really expect because this is something that every team has to go through in their league. And he pretty much stated that the interaction with college players at their pro days will be almost non-existent. Giants fans, we should absolutely expect that because of COVID. This is something that every team in the league has to go through. It has its pros, it has its cons. Obviously, you can't meet the players face to face, but a pro would be that's going to make other teams, a little wary on drafting certain players. So there may be certain players that fall in the draft, which I do think that we will see. Certain players that fall in the draft that usually wouldn't have fallen in the draft really because of this. So, like I said, there are pros to it, there are cons to this, but again, we shouldn't be surprised by that at all. I think that's something that we all already knew. Now, one thing I will say, one quote that I really loved by Judge was about free agency. He says that he's always a long-term picture guy and that free agency is not fantasy football. It's about bringing in players that are the right fit. And he's absolutely right. You saw in the past under Jerry Reese that we were bringing in players that didn't, and even under Dave Gettleman, we were bringing in players that were talented, but they didn't fit our culture, right? They didn't fit the vision and what we wanted. But with Judge, we're not only bringing in players that are talented, we're bringing in players that fit the culture that we're trying to build. And that's what good teams do. When you look around the league, look at the good teams, that is what they do. It's not about bringing in the most talented player, which that's not the worst thing, but you want to bring in a player that at least fits your culture and what you're trying to build. Honestly, Judge gives me more and more reasons to love him, and just hearing that quote, hearing really what he felt about that situation, I give him a lot of credit for because I do think that other head coaches would have approached that a little bit differently. Sometimes, you see around the league that they're looking for splash players, not really players that fit what they're trying to build there, and it ends up not working out. So, to me, I love that quote. Now, when asked about Nate Solder, he actually approached it differently than I first thought that he would. Judge actually said that when he spoke to Nate Solder, they didn't speak about football, which tells you the kind of guy that Judge is. He really cares for his players and wants the best for them. And you saw that with guys like Logan Ryan, James Bradbury, who pretty much said the same thing and how they respect him more because of how he treats his players. Now, he did state that he wants all of his players back, and we as Giants fans, we are itching for Nate Solder to get released, right? We are itching so that we can use that money, whether that's to go get a receiver, whether that's to bring back Dalvin Tomlinson or to help pay Leonard Williams. We are itching to get Nate Solder off of the books. But, that's just how the business goes. Players are going to get cut. Players are going to get traded. Contracts are going to get restructured. It's just how the business goes. And we're just pretty much just waiting any day now for Nate Solder to get cut, traded, or released. Now, he did speak on our favorite guy, Evan Ingram. And he states that Evan Ingram, he has a ton of confidence in Evan. He calls him a tireless worker. Well, he better live up to that because Giants fans are tired of him. He's cost us games last year, and you can make a very solid argument that the Giants would be better off without him. But it seems like we're stuck with him for at least another season, at least for now. But we'll see what happens after free agency. We'll see what happens in the draft. There's still room, to where he could get traded. He could get cut. Obviously, I could see him more get traded than him being cut. But at least for right now, Evan Ingram is on this team. Now, looking at Dave Gettleman's side of the presser, the media was out for Dave Gettleman today. Let's be honest. They were not letting Dave Gettleman breathe. Now, I thought there were some quotes from this presser that I took away that made me think, Dave Gettleman is he's such an interesting guy, because it's like you want him to say the right things, but he stumbles on his words. You got the Boston accent. There's so much that goes into Dave Gettleman that can really make you scratch your head sometimes. It makes you wonder why he's with the New York Giants. But When asked about Leonard Williams, Dave Gettleman stated that it certainly makes it more difficult for the Giants in free agency if the team has to allocate $19.4 million of the cap to Leonard Williams. And if that's the case, the team will adjust. Now, one thing I will state that I thought was very interesting was that Dave Gettleman also stated that the team hasn't yet made the decision about putting the franchise tag on Leonard Williams, which is huge because that was one of the biggest news, if not the biggest news, out today for the New York Giants, was that Leonard Williams was franchise tagged. Now remember, the Giants can take the franchise tag off Leonard Williams. Dave Gettleman has a history of that. He's done that in the past with Josh Norman, so I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. However, I don't expect them to do that. Now, this is something to keep your eyes on, Giants fan, because Leonard Williams is a big part of this defense. Whether we like him or not, he is a big part of this defense, and the smart move would be to bring back Leonard Williams and lower his cap hit, at least for the first year, so that we could possibly bring back other players. Now, one thing that I saw a lot of Giants fans talking about on Twitter, which rightfully so, I completely understand, was that Dave Gettleman stated that he's comfortable letting Parrott roll out at right tackle in 2021, which to me says two things. And before I get to what I'm about to say, I'm not fully sold on Matt Parrott just yet. I don't think he's a bad player. I just want to see more film on him. I thought that he had limited action. I thought there was games where he should have started over Cam Fleming. Obviously, that didn't happen. I do think that he needs more time, and I think that there's potential for him to be a good player. But if you're asking me, there's two things I got from this quote. One, we're starting to get answers on Matt Parrott and where this organization feels about Matt Parrott, which, you know, where they drafted him, can you really blame him for having that much confidence in him? I mean, he did show some positives. I thought that he looked decent in certain showings, but he's a rookie. That's one of the hardest positions to learn on the offensive line outside of right tackle. Another thing that it really told me was the cap. Let's be honest, Giants fans. The Giants right now are very tight on money, and we need to do everything that we can to save as much money as we can. Now, Kim Jones did give on Dave Gettleman, as she should, because when she asked Dave Gettleman about the offensive line, he kept trying to reiterate that they're young, they're talented, and it takes time. Well, Giants fans are getting tired of hearing this. You know, we know the line takes time, but we haven't had a line since our last Super Bowl. I saw Eli getting killed, and we're seeing DJ get killed in front of our very eyes. Something's got to change, and one thing that I will say about Dave Gettleman, and sometimes it pisses me off, but I try to not really take too much, with it, is that he seems very nonchalant about things that he should really put a lot of attention to when it becomes, a topic of the wide receiver position, when it becomes a topic of the offensive line. He's very nonchalant about it, which I know a lot of Giants fans, they probably are going to think that's that big of a deal. But to me, that's really something, because the offensive line, look, the offensive line, yes, they are young, they are talented, and they are still growing. But how long can we wait for this offensive line to improve? Daniel Jones is going on to his third year. Eventually, if we're looking to, keep him as our franchise guy, we're going to have to pay him. Eventually, Saquon's going to need a competent offensive line for him to really show off his abilities. So I think sooner or later, this offensive line has to keep pushing. We have to add more pieces. I do understand that right now we're in a position of, the cap isn't where we need it to be for us to really make the adjustments that we would want to make. But at the same time, Giants fans are getting tired of this offensive line being bad. I think that we see progression with the offensive line, and I think we are getting impatient. But all I could really say to Giants fans is we're going to have to be more patient, whether we want to or not. They're going to do whatever they feel is best for the organization, and all we can do is just report on it and pretty much just take it. But to me, Dave Gettleman can't get any more slack with the offensive line. He's had now 3 years building this offensive line. He's promised us that this offensive line will get better, and it's been relatively the same. It's gotten younger, but it's been relatively the same. Now, one last thing that Dave Gettleman stated, which to me was the biggest head scratcher of his presser, was that he stated that he's really against the idea of restructuring contracts and kicking the can down the road. Now, to me, my eyes got big when I heard that. Because if the Giants don't restructure some contracts, we're not going anywhere in free agency. You can mark that down. We are not going anywhere in free agency. We need to restructure Kevin Zeitler's contract. we need to let go of Nate Solder. There are some contracts that we need to restructure and get off the books. So I'm not sure why he said that. Right now we're in a position where we need as much money as we can get. And this mentality isn't the best mentality to have as a GM. But who am I, right? I'm just a kid on YouTube. So, to me, when I heard that made my eyes huge, because there are so many contracts that we could look at on this roster that we can either get rid of or restructure to help give us some cap in order to bring Leonard Williams back, possibly David Tomlinson, if not a wide receiver free agent. So that's my thoughts on the presser with Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge. How are you guys feeling about it? Let us know your thoughts below. What were some quotes that you liked hearing? What were some quotes you didn't like hearing? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, leave a like below, and we'll see you guys in the next video.